This computer. Hello, Julian. Welcome.
Hi, thank
Good to
you.
see you.
And you?
It's been yeah, so it's been what, about a month since we got to
Yeah,
meet in person.
yeah, it
And
has. And it was so great to meet you in person. I so enjoyed it.
yeah, likewise. Thank you for squeezing me in. I felt honored to be one of the few people you saw while in the UK. And it was during that conversation that the idea of us having this conversation came up.
Yeah,
Came up.
I think we both felt like there was so much for us to explore together, and some sort of introductory conversation would be a great way to kick that process off. So I'm so glad that we put this in the diary, and here we are.
Yeah, yeah, me too, me too. So, and you are my first. You are my first of these conversations.
Okay,
Um, I'm provisionally calling it Women Who Lead Change.
awesome.
And
I'm happy to be an inaugural member of that group.
yes, and I think yeah, you're very much, well, as you can see, on the top of the priority list of the women who I wanted to speak about this with. And you are the one said you are someone you said to me you are someone who's helping women redefine success on their own terms.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and
I
I know that you are able to say this because you recognize it too, as
Yeah, totally. I think I'm doing it for myself. So, you know, and it's, I think it's a very personal process, but I think it's also a very public one. I
Mhm.
think it's an intimate conversation we have with ourselves, but I also think it's a conversation that we need to have more broadly. And I think my theme, my focus on permission sits right in the middle of it because so much of it is about sort of detaching ourselves, I think, from a success story that we adopted without question, that really wasn't built for us,
Mhm.
it was never our story. It was a male story, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. That's not denigrating that. It's just
Mhm.
saying, the reality of our lives is that they move differently. And I think up until now, that's been seen, and that it has been a challenge to women to kind of navigate a professional path or a life path that feels like it evolves and unfolds in a satisfying way. So many of the women I know just, are frustrated and exhausted and sapped and end up kind of bailing because they don't have anything left. And
Yeah.
that's where I think you and I come together around this, rest and restorative sort of practice at a center of a new version of success that might be more sustainable and more fulfilling than the one that I think we've been sold up until now.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you said the women end up failing, but actually we end up feeling like we're failing, right? Or
Right.
we are failing ourselves because we disconnect from what's true to us.
Yeah, because, I don't think we feel allowed to name what's true to us, to act in accordance with what's true to us. I think, if you look at a lot of young women, if I think back, to as a young woman, it's, you're set up to want to succeed within a traditional frame of, a linear corporate career. And I think up until now, that was considered what good looked like. That was the
Mhm.
prototype, was
Mhm.
women scaling corporate hierarchies and getting that seat at the table. And I think what we're seeing right now are just legions of women who have either tried to get there and found that it sucked the life out of them, got there and found out it wasn't all it was made out to be, or are sitting at a younger age looking at it and going, I'm not sure that this is worth fighting for. So, can we allow ourselves to envision alternatives, to really step into a vision of a personal and professional path that might look very, very different than a male counterparts, and that's okay. That's okay.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. And I really want to, because you sent me a message um, last week, I think,
Mm,
and you said, well, things along rest that is very much connected to permissions because we have to give ourselves permission to rest. And the reason why you really want to, um, where is it? Okay, yes. So I will just read it out. So, with something that is something that's very really, oh, that's a translator. I'll be cutting these out, editing these.
okay.
So really give yourself permission for it, for rest, because you're always on. And I think you said this. I think as we move into the era of careers that are less shaped by outside forces, like
Mm,
the
corporate.
shapes that you've just, the corporate that you've described. So
Mm,
careers that are less shaped by outside forces and more shaped by our own choices. The choice to rest will become more critical.
yeah. Yeah. And I stand by that. I think, when our lives looked like, a very linear and stable path, which was, the 20th century sort of career path, it was you chose a field, you even possibly chose a company, and your goal was to stay with that for as long as you could.
Mhm.
And within that context of stability and, linearity, I don't think themes of rest came up as much. So why are they coming up now? Why are we talking so much about burnout and rest? And why are we experiencing, I think, I wrote about it yesterday on LinkedIn, kind of almost this existential fatigue because we're our lives are not linear anymore because we're experiencing so much change because we're having to make so many choices and people have portfolio careers where they're managing three or four different roles. They've started their own thing, they're contemplating doing that. So we are self-directing or being required to self-direct, I think, much more than
Mhm.
we used to, and within that, making a conscious decision to create your own boundaries, making a conscious decision to embed rest and to step away is critical. And I mean, I feel it when you're doing your own thing, and you will know this too. There are no office hours. There is no break. You can work 7 days a week if you want, all day long. So, that need to really intentionally choose to step away and rest, I think, is going to become more and more critical in our careers and in our lives.
That makes so much sense. And I heard you talk about choice, so choosing to do something. And I also heard you talk about how much more complex life, careers, world has become. And from nervous system regulation perspective, it almost feels like choice is the opposite. Yeah, there is the opposite of context. Context gives us, can we want to know what's happening, we want to know what's going to happen, but actually the choices we have are so vast that can
Mm,
overwhelm us,
totally.
which is why resting, I can talk that from a nervous system perspective, which is why resting is so important because we then come back to nervous system regulation where we can make informed choices, or we feel we have choices to make, or we can make choices. We know what's happening, but or what's going to happen, or we are okay not knowing what's going to happen because
Mm,
we can connect to ourselves. It's a three-pronged nervous system
mm,
regulation
mm.
element or foundation of choice, connection, and context. And where am I going with this? Yes, just how there is this almost constant play or dance of these
Yeah,
context, choice, connection, and
absolutely.
and I really want to link up to your area of focus, to permissions.
Mm,
Mm, where the permissions that you focus on fit around
mm.
yours or the
Well,
world we live in?
mm. Well, I see permission as a form of self-direction, right? I'm consciously making choices, big ones, small ones, um, in this world, which you've just beautifully described as being sort of overwhelming us with options. I am really engaging quite intentionally and explicitly with what my sort of default patterns might be, the imprinted sets of stories that I have, the old operating system I might be working from, which in the case of rest was kind of you're not allowed, right? You're not allowed to do that. You push hard, your value in the world is a result of your productivity, and your productivity is this kind of go 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 mentality, which has been our operating model since the late 80s, 90s and onwards. It was this, you know keep going.
Hmm.
And I think moving forward, it becomes ever more important to engage explicitly with, you know what am I allowing myself to do? What do I believe I am allowed to do? And if I don't believe I'm allowed to set my own boundaries, to say no,
Hmm.
to switch my phone off, to not respond to the email at, midnight, then I'm, setting myself on a path that's probably not sustainable, particularly in a hugely disruptive world where, I'm managing things all the time. So for me, this theme of self-direction and self-permission is like an essential part of our 21st century operating system. It's like you've got to be engaging with this intentional choice making. Um, Otherwise, you're going to find yourself burning out or even becoming irrelevant because you're not actively engaging with the environment around you and what's best in this moment, not, what used to be. So, I think it's a very active and intentional process of navigating our lives at a point when, whether we like it or not, we have to do that.
Mm. It takes courage because, as you said, we're having to rewire
Mm,
um, childhood conditioning, social conditioning.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And that's why I think it's so important for it to become more of a social conversation because, a lot of that rewiring is happening in each of us. And as you say, it can feel really hard. It can feel transgressive. It can feel like, oh my gosh, I'm going against everything that I was raised to do. I'm taking risks that, my father would never have taken. What might he think of me? All of
Mhm.
these kinds of, as you say, cultural, familial conditioning that, we have to engage with. And I think that's becomes so much easier when you're aware of the fact that we're all doing it in various ways because this moment is requiring that of us. We're in very, very new territory here as a lot of our familiar ways of operating unravel around us, as AI reshapes our understanding of how work will look, as political and social norms shift profoundly.
Yeah.
So we really have to be very, very thoughtful and intentional. And that doesn't have to be all on our own. We can make this more of a shared process.
Mm. Yeah, and for me, I want 2026 to be all about collaboration. So the idea of sharing the process is very, very attractive. And I think that's what we need to be focusing on because we live in a world that wants or encourage us to be disconnected from, well, it's set up to be disconnected from each other. COVID really highlighted it or
Right.
amplified it. So I do believe that the key is to connect with each other around
I do
this.
I do too. I
Yeah.
really do. I think this is not something for us to try and go into our heads and our beds and our own worlds and try and figure out on our own. It's not necessary, but also it won't kind of compound as quickly, which is why, having seen some of the things that you're doing around gathering people to have this conversation about rest, about boundaries, about self-directing in a way that will allow me to sustain success for a much longer and more satisfying time. That for me is a really critical social conversation that we need to be
Mm.
having.
Yeah. And we touched on rewiring or unlearning, and I wonder what belief about success did you have to unlearn to become the woman you are today?
Well, I think in line with what I'm kind of talking about here, that it would be linear.
Okay, is that here?
Yeah, that it would be linear, that it would kind of, that one thing would lead to another. I think particularly over the past 5 or 6 years, my goodness, I have been living out my own winding and looping path, and realizing that one, there was so much learning in that. Two, that there were so many elements of that were the success story, that it wasn't about just getting to a place in the quickest time possible, that it was about the growth and the experimentation and the creation that would come along that winding path that would itself be part of the story. I think, we all again are conditioned with this kind of destination mindset that, oh, once I have the book out, I'll be a success. No, it's a stop along the way. It's a moment in time, but it's all part of the story. And, I talk in the book about savoring versus striving, to kind of allow myself to savor and not just jump on to the next thing. Because I'm also working on my own rewiring. Like, I'm a part of that too. So I think, it's a practice. It's an ongoing practice of engaging with self and story, and micro decisions to just interrupt that
Mm.
and remind yourself that you have other options.
Mm. Mm. Savoring versus striving, and keep reminding yourself that you have other options, and it's a lifelong practice. Yeah.
It really is. And I think, as with most things that are beneficial, I think about this as like I would any sort of fitness in my life. I don't do it once, I don't do it periodically. It's a practice that really grounds me in, experiencing beneficial, rewarding, satisfying um, experiences in my life that I feel an immediate sort of benefit from. So, in the same way that making intentional choices to keep growing and learning and evolving is in its own way rewarding and compounding. Um, so yeah, I see it the way I see stretching, the way I see walking, the way I see, weights and swimming and breathing and all the things that make me feel good and help me to grow. And I
Mm.
think it's important that people see it as that. It isn't a problem that you solve. It's a practice that you embed within your life.
Yeah, I like that it isn't a problem that you solve, a practice that you embed in your life, and it makes
Mm.
so much sense. I also, in parallel with coaching, in coaching, we're not fixing someone because
Mm.
they're broken. We are helping them realize how incredible they are, and then realize who they are. And that's what I heard when you're talking about it. It's a practice, or it's someone you become, right? Someone who
Yeah,
is this way.
that's right. It's just an ongoing process of becoming that you have to take responsibility for, that you've got to drive,
Yeah.
I think. And I think when you do start driving, you start feeling the benefits of that, the energy that comes from not feeling subject to everything around you that you're trying
Yeah.
to kind of deal with and handle, that you are, feeling a little bit more powerful, a little bit more confident and in control of things because you're not just, being buffeted by forces beyond your control. I
Yeah.
think that's something that, can really start to, um, even with the smallest choices, start to actually shift the way you show up.
Yeah. That makes so much sense. And I keep I'm polyvagal informed, so nervous system regulation informed. So I keep seeing everything you say or people say through the lens of the nervous system. And
Mhm.
indeed, when we give ourselves the right permission, so we're aware of the choices we have, when we rest, when we define success in our own terms, so we and when we practice these things, we have access to regulated nervous system part
Right.
where yes, it's much easier to make choices. Everything becomes clearer. Time slow down. We
Mm.
realize we have more time than we thought. We have more energy. We have motivation. World is full of opportunities. So yeah, it makes so much sense. The way
Yeah.
you describe it
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, and I think, that's the moment that we're in right now is a real heightened awareness of these issues. We weren't having this conversation even 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So I think we are learning and socializing some of these elements very relatively quickly. I think it's a case now of sort of, okay, how do we start to embed some of this into our mainstream lives in the way that, over the last 30 to 40 years, fitness has gotten embedded.
Yeah.
There weren't gyms, there weren't health clubs, there wasn't, Pilates studios and yoga studios and this and that and the other. It's now a fundamental part of human existence. And so, will we see over the next 10, 20, 30 years a similar movement towards sort of brain training, nervous system um, management, whatever you want to call it? The ways in which we will be supporting and enabling ourselves to thrive in a world
Mm.
that requires that kind of intentionality.
Yeah, that makes so much sense as well. And that leads me very nicely to the next question around you have published a book called
Mm.
10 Permissions.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you've been doing hosting facilitating workshops around it,
Yep.
uh, which I see as you spreading the message or spreading the message of and permission,
Mm.
mission. So where in your work or mission do you feel you're leading change right now?
Yeah, I think you just said I would like to think that I am starting to embed ideas into a social dialogue and an individual dialogue around that will help us all to become far more intentional kind of personal change managers, if you will, that will, I'm not a huge fan of the word empower, but I'll use it right here, empower people to drive their own choice making, to feel. I think one of the collective experiences of the past decade has been a sense of overwhelm and feeling out of control, and even, to a point of cynicism and catastrophism. And I think what we need to do is kind of pull some of this back within our own locus of control. And for me, the conversation around permission and the 10 permissions is to pull that back into self, into social groups and gatherings where we allow ourselves to make choices that serve us and suit this moment, that we don't continue to default to a very outdated set of expectations and scripts and, conditionings that frankly don't serve us necessarily. So yeah, I would love to think that the book and the everything I'm building around that will help people to thrive amidst a world that doesn't show any signs of slowing down or getting more stable.
Mm. I think the conversation that you are driving through your book, through your workshops, through your 10 Permissions group that I'm part of, which has been incredible. is so needed and so valuable. And I see it too as a reminder, constant reminder, regular, again, daily reminder that the choices that I maybe have forgotten or the permissions that I have forgotten were there, that I can access them.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I think that's the other thing is that, I think our previous mental model around personal growth and change was sort of, stable, 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 make change. Stable, 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 make change. And I think what we're talking now is about iterating and
the,
adapting in small ways all the time
yeah, yeah,
so that we're not beholden to a status quo as our only sense of safety, but that we are far more adept at driving sort of routine adaptation
yeah,
as opposed to periodic kind of reinvention. Um, so yeah, small things done
yes.
routinely.
And again, from the nervous system perspective, small is more accessible to the nervous
Mm,
system than big, big changes that can create a shock.
right.
And that's I talked about this in my TEDx talk, which I know you're a TEDx speaker too. Uh,
Mm,
the theme of the talk was change and continuity, and I talked about how rest is a way we return to our inner peace,
yeah.
which again it has to be a daily practice because there is so much change, as we said in this. Is it VUCA world?
Yeah.
Um, what does it stand for? Volatile and
Uncertain, uncertain.
anyway, complex, unpredictable,
Yes.
something like that.
Yes. We
Um,
got it.
I'll have to
Crazy,
yes,
chaotic.
chaotic, yes. And yes, we have to have these regular returns,
Mm.
and that's something you mentioned as well.
Yeah, I love that idea of kind of returning into self. And I think, as young people, as children, there's a priority put around rest because we recognize that that little human is growing. And I think we need to accept the fact that big humans now are having to grow too. That
Yes.
we don't enter adulthood as this time of sort of stasis where you just, as I often say, put on a suit and sleepwalk. You just then kind of, it's like, no, 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 no. We are having to learn. We are having to grow. We get to. Great, great. But that requires a different way of self-management. And that
Mhm.
requires us to kind of really come into self. I call it, inside out, finding your way, where you're very coming into self and saying, this is what I want, this is what I need. And I'm going to listen to that need and want as opposed to dismissing it in favor of some external narrative that I'm choosing to adopt as my own. So yeah, I think it's more important than ever.
Yes, and I also remember we talked about this that as we as adults we are just learning this now, so we it's important that we show younger people too that this is so crucial because they didn't necessarily have the good example, the right example from us
Yeah.
when they're growing up with us.
No, and I think we're seeing that a little bit in workplaces now
Mm.
with, there's so much sort of derision around Gen Z, basically, I think being better boundary setters than
Yeah,
some of us have been in some ways. And there's, it often gets associated with entitlement. Like, oh, shame, you don't want to work late. Well, what's wrong with these people? Why are they not sacrificing themselves at the altar of their job? And I kind of go, well, let's see, maybe because they grew up watching people burn out and then get laid off.
yeah,
Like, no, they're not buying the story that their livelihood is, attached to this one entity. They are making more conscious choices. They are looking after themselves. I admire that. Um, I don't think self-sacrifice is something that we should, hold up as some great character trait. It hasn't served us all that well. And so, if they are boundary setting and, looking to kind of protect themselves to some extent, more power to them.
yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
Yeah. And this the question that I really like to ask, it's a coaching style question. Um, and it's around rest as well. What becomes possible for you personally and in your business, in a mission, when you lead from a rested, regulated self rather than survival mode?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think it sits at the heart of your work because, survival mode doesn't give birth to anything. Survival mode is literally keeping myself alive. It's not giving life to things. And when I'm rested and when I'm working from a place of calm and centered and focused and safe, I can create things, right? I tap into my creative power. And my creative power is not accessible to me when I'm in survival mode. And that's, where it's just get it done and tick it off and run, run, run and show everybody what a great workhorse you are. Yeah,
Mm,
I I I find so much creative power in a rested state.
yeah. And is there a moment or example where this really showed up for you?
I think whenever I take an intentional break, which I think for all of us, there's always that little negotiation with self because you know that there's things that you could do or should do. The should story
Mhm.
starts to loom
Right.
itself up.
Yes.
Um, I start to become aware, and I was aware of this on the last holiday that I took, that ideas would kind of come to me unbidden, unasked for. Like there was this bubbling inside
Mhm.
of me, and I actually started to just find something to take it down, what was coming up for me. Like it became more organic and just natural that I would just, at a subconscious level, almost be allowing myself to just, um, you know, play around with things in the back of my mind. And I think we underestimate how much is working when we're not switched on and focused and in a I am working mode. So many things come up for me on holidays and on leisurely walks where I'm unhurried and unbothered. And I think it's really important to start to recognize that state and honor it
Yeah.
because whew, some of my best creative thinking has come out of those spaces.
Mm. Yeah, that's so powerful. We can't force creativity.
Mm-mm.
So we have to have that space, yeah.
Mm. And I think when we do try to, I mean, as a facilitator who's run, endless numbers of brainstorming exercises, which so often fall flat, um, yeah, I think it's almost like such a misunderstanding of the life source of some of our best thinking. It's like, no, it comes from a different place. Um, so yeah, giving people room, giving people just permission to let things emerge as opposed to, okay, come, give me your best ideas.
Yes. And let's think it up.
Yes. No, it's a
Yeah.
feeling. It's a kind of, bubbling. And I
Yeah.
think it's so important to recognize that.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And creativity, yeah, creativity. Yeah, it can be hard to access when we are coping or when we are in survival mode. Well, actually, we can't really access it. So yeah, I love that you have experience. You're very clear on that.
Mm,
Yeah,
mm, yeah.
yeah. And what's one question you would like me to ask you?
Oh, how interesting. Why is giving ourselves permission to rest one of the most transgressive things we can do? Like,
Okay.
why is it so, like, and it really is. It's come up a lot since I started when I've asked people, like, "Ooh, what's the permission you want to give yourself?" rest.
Hmm.
And yet it feels, oh, oh, um, yeah, and I think it's such an important starting point for engaging with our own ideas around our personal value and a sort of industrial era mindset that we were machines that just worked and worked and worked. And if we didn't do that, well, what good were we anyway? So I think for me, that's such an important question that we can keep exploring. What's at stake for us in this, you know, go, go, go space that feels quite dangerous to let go of?
Mm. That's a great question.
Mm.
And as we are wrapping up, conscious of your energy too, your
Thank
time.
you.
I know it's
Thank
very
you.
important. Um, what's one message would you like to leave for the women who are redefining success and leading change in their own lives?
That there's never been a better time to allow yourself to write your own success story in ways and on terms that work for you. Like, you know, the world, the fixed world where there was one way forward and one version of good is really unraveling.
Mhm.
And I think that it's a great time for us to be having these conversations. Um, and that it doesn't have to be alone. Like it doesn't have to be you struggling all by yourself to figure it out. I think there are forms, we are creating them. Like let's have this conversation together. Um, and let's together give ourselves permission to think in our most creative ways about what our version of good might look like. Okay. And accept right from the get-go that it is not going to be our male counterparts version, right? It might be more meandering. It might have stops and starts. It might involve multiple chapters. It might, not appear on the outside as tidy and as sequential and as upwardly mobile as we want it to look. That's okay. We have to allow ourselves to see our lives unfolding in a very different way and not judge ourselves for it or hold ourselves to a standard that was never ours in the first place.
Mm. Back to permissions. Let's give us ourselves
All roads. Yeah.
permission to create our own path, to define our own path, and let's come together, give ourselves permission to get lost
Yeah.
and find our way back. Yeah,
Yeah. Totally. And help
yeah,
each other along the way.
yeah. Which is why I'm so pleased we're having this conversation. And
Mhm.
for the people who would like to find out more about your work, how and where
Mhm.
can they find you?
They can find me on my website, 10permissions.com. I'm very active on LinkedIn. The book itself is available through Amazon, through Barnes and Noble, through Waterstones, or any of your local bookstores if that's the route that you choose to buy your books from. If you go there, you can order it from them. Yeah, and I'm excited to be in conversation with women about this because I think the moment is ours and nobody's, again, using my language, nobody's going to come and give us permission to create this path. We have to give it to ourselves and do so intentionally and collectively and figure out where it can take us.
Mm, thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you very much for this conversation. Always such a pleasure to exchange wisdom with
Mm,
you. I know
mm.
our views on the world and how to move forward are very much aligned, and what you're doing really matters to in the world we live in.
Thank
Um,
you.
for those of you who are listening or watching, if you've enjoyed this conversation, I invite you to connect with Jillian Reilly. I call Jillian the permissions lady. And her
The
book,
permissions lady.
yeah, and her book, just a reminder, title is The 10 Permissions. Is that right?
That's right.
And so, yeah, stay tuned for more Women Who Lead Change conversations. Ola, the Queen of Rest. And I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you very much. Thanks, Jillian.
Thank you, Rula.
I'll stop recording now.